Hello there, welcome back to another video. I am still Ramona, and this is another, what is a true story you have that no one will ever believe? When I was a kid, I saw a crow land on a telephone wire and get electrocuted. I can still vividly remember the flash of light and the crow exploding. When I told my parents and friends about it, they didn't believe me, even when I showed them the pieces of the crow on the sidewalk. To this day, they still don't believe me. Was walking back from the Lava Lounge in Seattle back in 2001, was doing some underage drinking. There was some scaffolding and construction around the Crocodile. Out of nowhere, a gang of 8 or so drunken clowns started getting loud, approached me, then dry humped me against the wall for a minute. It was probably 1 a.m. Now, when you say clowns, do you mean like actual clowns or just derogatory, punks kind of thing? That's a very important thing we should know. Hot air balloon made an emergency landing in my backyard once. When I was a kid, I saw it rain tiny frogs. Nobody believes me, but I'm sure there is an explanation. I unknowingly installed webcams, computers, and internet access to a 10-room mansion for a wealthy business executive who was importing 18-year-old boys from Thailand to be his pets. It took about 2 months to complete the whole project, and he would always take me out to get hot dogs for lunch. I have been hunted across the country by the FBI. They found me, no need to re-find me. I was at a rave once when a drive-by occurred. I dove behind the giant propane tank for protection. I went from making $20,000 a year to $150,000 a year in one phone call and 3 days later. That last part's probably not right. No, I'm joking. When I first discovered masturbating, I cranked down 4 times in a row, marathon style. I was declared a divine gift by the monks of St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt. The monastery was built around the alleged burning bush from the book of Exodus, and since I was really into religions at the time, I asked the monks some questions about the bush and whether they have any other interesting relics in their monastery. The monks went silent and asked me and my family to follow them down to the gates of the burning bush. They let me see the alleged remnants of the burning bush, and even though we were not Orthodox Christians, this is a privilege granted only to a few high officials in the Orthodox Church, and they said we were the first secular people to ever see the burning bush. After visiting the burning bush, the monks gave me some kind of special blessing, where they declared me as that divine gift and a silver ring with Greek writing on it. I was a kid at the time, so I didn't really react to it in an extravagant way, but my mom was dumbfounded for days, since she was a very religious person. Now, at an older age, I'm just wondering if they do this every now and again as a prank, or if they actually saw something special in me. Edit. For the people asking, I still have the ring in my childhood home, but I'm sorry that I can't provide pictures because I live pretty far away. I am not a religious person. My agnosticism grows stronger every day. And no, even though I have what some would call an eidetic memory, it doesn't mean that I can remember what happened on a specific date many years ago. It means I can memorize pictures, texts, and number chains for a long period of time with only seeing them once. I'm still shitty at math, though. Someone replied with, one time at St. Augustine's, I went to a church. I was Catholic then, since I was about 6, and my grandparents were Catholic. When I sat there looking at Jesus and thinking about Pokemon, some old lady came up to me and my grandma and said to her, obviously a very important child that has been blessed by God or something. They gave me a shitty rosary. I got a shitty plastic homemade rosary from a fucking old lady, and you got a goddamn silver Greek ring. Damn you! I was in Mexico way past my visa allowance. Was only allowed 90 days, but was been there for about 6 months at the time of the story. I was driving and passed a police car going too fast, so I got pulled over. I should mention that I was also illegally working in Mexico at the time as well, and had my uniform and stuff in my trunk. As I'm pulled over and doing the whole license registration thing, the cops asked me for my visa. I told them that it was at my house, which is not too far away, and if they would allow me to go get it. At this point, I just wanted to be left alone for a second so I could make some calls and find out what to do. They asked me if they let me go, that it would be valid. Not wanting to lie and F myself over more, I told them that no, it was expired, and asked them what now. They started explaining to me that they would have to take me to jail and then be deported. At this point, I am talking to one officer while the other is searching my car and finds my uniform. They ask me if I'm working in Mexico as well. At this point, they are getting angry and start making vague threats about how I am getting the same treatment Mexicans get when they are in the U.S. working illegally and get caught. At this point, I realized they didn't realize my license was a Canadian license and that I was Canadian. I told them this, and instantly the situation completely changed. Now they don't care about the visa and are asking me tons of questions about Canada. Is it cold all year? Do bears wander the streets of Toronto? Etc. We talked for a while, and they seemed really interested in Canada and were really friendly with me when they realized I was an American. So when I calmed down a bit after talking to them, I figured might as well ask again what they want me to do about the visa situation. They seemed apologetic and said unfortunately they'd already called it in, so they had to bring me to the station. As I am ready to start going with them, they hear the radio on their cruiser, so one goes to answer it. He comes running back to my car and tells me to quickly get in my car and follow them down the road. Don't even think about trying to get away from them. At this point, I have no idea what the F is going on, but I just do what he says and get in my car and follow them as they start speeding away, 100 plus in a 60. About 2 minutes down the road, a car bomb has gone off near a restaurant and injured, maybe killed, I never found out, a bunch of people. We pulled up to the smoldering car and the cops get out and tell me to wait in my car. As I wait in my car, they go and do their cop thing. After about 20 minutes, one of the officers comes back to my car, hands me my license, tells me to go home and not get caught again, and get back to Canada ASAP. I stayed in Mexico another 8 months before I went back. My brothers and sisters and I lived in poverty in New England for almost all of our lives. Too many nights where dinner was only an idea. Couldn't afford to buy me boxers in the 6th grade. Mother was endlessly carrying it, endlessly plagued by severe alcoholism. It cripples our family. Father was too distant, yet one of us is a lieutenant in a fire department. 2 of us are teachers. One of us works with Major League Baseball, and the other one is applying to colleges to make their future better too, all being very successful. None of us resorted to drugs or drinking to resolve or mitigate our problems. I will never know how. I love my family to death. My grandmother was murdered by my grandfather when my mom was a little girl. It was never proven, but we know it. Backstory available if anyone is interested. Side note, the house she died in was supposedly haunted. A couple of stories there, too. Edit. Sorry it took me so long to reply, guys. I have a 16-month-old, so my computer time is quite limited. Haha. Okay, story time. When my mother was 11, she was at home with my nurse grandmother and abusive grandfather. My mom had a pretty tough childhood and still went to bed every night. She had 2 older siblings, and they were all moved out and stuff. Anyway, my grandmother was a nurse, as I said before. She gave herself a vitamin shot every day. We just administered it to herself, no big deal. She had been doing this for as long as my mother can remember. Well, on this particular night, there was a lot of fighting. Threats, crying, physical violence, the whole 9 yards. As my mother was going to bed, her father stops her and offers her a glass of Coke. Of course she says yes, without wondering why an adult would offer a notorious bedwetter a drink at bedtime. The next morning, my mother wakes up to her 22-year-old sister shaking her and screaming for her to wake up. My mom woke up, but said she felt dizzy and sick. She didn't quite understand why her sister was there and why she was screaming. Apparently, the night before, about an hour after my mother went to bed, my grandmother gave herself a fatal overdose of insulin. She also kept the insulin in case of emergency for my uncle. My aunt saw the body and said she had bruises and the injection spot had multiple pricks. This was back in the 70s, and after telling the police his wife was a heavy drinker and suicidal, they dropped the case. After my grandmother's death, my grandfather literally just packed up and left, without his 11-year-old daughter. My mom ended up growing up in a group home and had some terrible stories from her youth. She actually ended up turning into an alcoholic to reclaim her youth, and that killed her 2 years ago on her 46th birthday. Nobody in my family has spoken to him since the 70s. He may have approached my brother in the 90s, she wasn't sure, but he took off after making a racial slur about her biracial children. Even if he was around, he would not be in my life. Okay then, ghost story time. The first one was right after my grandmother died in the same house. My aunt moved in with her grandfather when her grandfather left to try to take care of my mother. It didn't work out, but that's beside the point. Anyway, my mom gets home from school one day and my aunt is sitting in the driveway, pale and shaking. My mom asks what's wrong, and she says she refuses to go in. Said she heard something weird in my mother's room. They didn't really go in there. Grandma liked her personal space in life. Out of habit, except to occasionally clean. So my mother approached the door, wondering why her sister was being an idiot. As soon as she touched the doorknob, the entire door shook like something slammed into it. This was accompanied by an almost comical roar. My mom immediately opened the door because she didn't believe it was anything but an idiot dog. Not a thing in the room, nothing out of place. My mom said she was more curious to its origins than scared. Same house, same time frame. My mother was in her own bedroom, doing whatever by the window. She happens to glance out the window at her mother's. Their windows faced each other over the backyard patio. She just sees the heavy velvet drapes in the room swishing back and forth really hard, like someone was swinging them. She ran to her mother's room, and the curtains weren't even fluttering. The last thing, I'm not sure how factual it is. I've never actually researched it, but it's common knowledge in my family. After my mother moved out of the house into a group home, the house was sold to a newlywed couple. A few months after they moved in, the dude went nuts and chopped his wife into multiple pieces. He then dumped those pieces in the mountains and tried to pretend she never existed. My family likes to think of this as proof that something evil was in that house. Natalie Portman's people had her do a live stream for her fans on Stickum in the summer of 2008. Being a horny teenager, I flashed her. I don't think she ever went back to Stickum. Nobody believes me, but Natalie Portman saw my junk. My dad's first wife was murdered by a hitman, hired by a funeral director, and then just sold in her burial plot because he needed more business. Both fled the country and were never caught. It was the summer before 6th grade. We had a kid in our class a few years who was a friend, but we weren't really close. That summer, we took a trip to California to see the typical sights and visit a beach. What beach, you may ask? I have no idea. I'm from Nebraska. Anyway, while at the beach, I saw my classmate. He was sitting with his dad. Parents were divorced. It was a month visitation during the summer. We were stoked that we saw each other. He showed me how to use his bodyboard, and we spent the day checking out the hot babes that were clearly into a few pubescent boys. When school started back up, I was bummed to learn that he decided to live in California and not return to Nebraska. It literally made no sense to me. I told all of my classmates that I saw him on the beach while in California. This was before every kid in America had a camera phone, late 80s, so no one believed me and accused me of making it up. I stole a Senegalese assassin's girlfriend. Maybe a plot to a movie, I'm not sure. I threw a dead guy out of an airplane once. That also may be a plot of a movie. When I was a kid, I peed on the White House. I didn't stop breastfeeding until I was around 14. I'm a girl. And there was no milk left, but somehow my mom just never got around weaning me off until I realized that it was fucking weird and refused to keep doing it. Even now, I'm upset she would ask me if I wanted to her boobs. I'm 19. If it matters, my dad died when I was 8. I don't think that matters, but okay. I bumped into Tommy Lee Jones chowing down on a big plate of barbecue at a polo match. That's actually pretty cool. I was 15 and was friends with an old millionaire drug dealer in Australia who I met in a religious debate on YouTube. Turns out he likes photography, astronomy, and was generally a friendly fellow. I'm a Christian and he was an agnostic, but that didn't stop us from sending hundreds of messages over the course of a few months, talking about whatever, but usually religion. I think he died after liver or kidney failure. I miss that guy. I once got a call from a telemarketer, figured out his home number, then called him at his home during dinner to tell him how annoying he was. I met David Beckham once at McDonald's. People never believe me when I tell them this, but it's 100% true. It was back in the 90s, and me and my dad used to go to watch the Man United training sessions, and one day we spotted David Beckham going through the McDonald's drive-thru, so we ran over, tapped on his window, and got his autograph. I once got trapped in an outhouse by a horse. I had to climb out of the top vent. It was scary. I met a guy down at the beach, and we quickly liked each other. We talked and hung out every day. We both really liked each other. Sadly, he lived in a different state. We tried to do long distance, but everyone knows how that ends. Towards the end of our relationship, he got hit in the head with a baseball bat and woke up the next day not remembering me or anything about our relationship. He would have dreams that we were actually real memories, and I hoped one day he would remember everything about us, but he never did. Eventually, it was too much for me, and I ended things. Jesus, just like a Nicholas Sparks novel. I used to live in southwest Florida and loved to go fishing. I always went to this one pier that extended about 100 yards into the bay near my house. There were some people there fishing as well. They were there when I arrived. Through conversation, while we watched our lines, and I learned they had lost an unintended rod over the railing earlier. So there I am, casting for what I think is the third time, reeled it in, and that's when I felt something tug. Thinking I just made the biggest, fastest catch ever, I brought it in, and shit, was it hard. I thought my line was going to snap for sure. It didn't, though, and when I brought that missing fishing pole out of the water, I nearly pissed myself, I was laughing so hard. So I get up to the pier with the other people fishing are thanking me and laughing, when I realize there's still tension in the line of the pole I pulled out of the ocean. So naturally I start reeling. This is different from before. There was something alive on the end, no doubt. So yet again I reel, and I shit you not, I pull a 2-foot wide stingray out of the water. Nobody will believe me, even when I show them the picture of the stingray on the pier, and it seriously pisses me off. While on a trip to Las Vegas last year, I went to a lovely little park. LA has some beautiful forestry in the parks, to be honest. At this very lovely park, I was wandering around without my group because they were just talking to each other. When I walked away, I noticed an almost pure white canine walking past me. It turned and stared at me. I stared back and tried to coax it to come over. It had no collar, and it looked like no dog I had ever seen. It just stood there, not looking at me in a threatening manner, but almost as if it were curious. I got closer, and it turned and trotted away. Nobody else in the park paid any attention to it. I thought I was crazy. I told my group about it after we walked off. Needless to say, they thought I was nuts too. Sorry, I didn't see a dog, my guy friend told me. When I got back home, I Googled large white husky. None of those pictures matched. Then I thought for a moment and Googled large white wolf. Surprise, surprise, the pictures matched the thing I saw. To this day, no one believes me. They tell me I saw a dog or a husky or whatever, and not a single person I tell believes I actually saw a wolf. My grandfather told me that had it been a wolf, it would have torn me apart. He thinks wolves are vicious monsters. So yeah, I saw an Arctic wolf in L.A. No one believes me. 2 Hooter girls spent the night with me. Things did not go as planned, and I rubbed my on one of them for 8 hours. Pennies did not fall off. No ejaculation. Depression followed. Oh, wait. This is highly believable. A contractor found 2 guns in my attic. I'd never been up there in the 5 years I owned the house. I called the police non-emergency line on the advice of the officer friend. Officer showed up, but can't get up into the attic without a ladder, so I go out and fetch my stepladder. I'm walking down the hall with a ladder, looking right at the officer when my cat, Piglet, gets under my feet. Without thinking, while looking the officer in the eye, I say, "Move, Pig!" Most awkward silence ever. Officer didn't say a word, just took the ladder and went up to the attic. I've never really had weird superpowers when I was able to avoid long lines. It's uncanny, and usually the lines get worse immediately after I arrive. Restaurants, freeways, on-ramps, stores, etc. It happens enough to where I think I am asked by friends to join them just to avoid said lines. I watched the sunrise from the top of Mount Fuji, became a professional boxer in South Korea, and was forced to turn down the amorous advances of a ladyboy in the middle of a Thai jungle. I was hit by a car in 6th grade coming home from school. At the time, I lived about 2 miles away and rode my bike every day and got hit by a van running a stop sign. The van never stopped, and that's really all I remember was waking up in the hospital a day later. That was rough. 2. Robbed at gunpoint when I was a freshman in high school. Was with my mother late at night walking back to the car after eating at, of all places, Paradise Bakery. He had the gun pointed at me. 3. Was driving on a highway when I just got my license, and a brick flew out of the back of a truck and hit my front windshield. The brick must have broken it and could have broken it and killed me, but I tried to dodge it and swerved out of the control, almost crossing into the opposite side of traffic. I was still only 16. I have pictures of the last one. It just happened in February. I must have been either the worst or the best luck. My uncle died in Egypt because he was eaten by a crocodile in the Nile while he was there doing voluntary work as a doctor. A cousin of my grandmother was paralyzed and could suddenly walk at the age of 22. The same month he finished revalidation, he went to work in the field and got stuck with his pants in the tractor and was totally powdered. My great-great-grandfather, also a doctor, died in prison because they left him to die because he helped a Nazi survive. The cousin of my grandfather died during the World War II because there was an internal conflict between the Flemish and Walloons in Belgium. A Walloon threw a grenade and my grandfather's cousin saved his friends by laying on it. P.S. Not sure about all the relatives. It could have been an uncle of my grandfather, I'm not sure. But the stories are 100% true. I was sitting on the curb of a busy intersection with my girlfriend at the time when a car approached the intersection, hit a rabbit. The rabbit was in mid-stride, and it flew forward instead of getting squashed. The rabbit flew a few feet and landed in my lap. Both me and the rabbit survived. Well, let's end it on that happy note because, I'm glad it's not the killer rabbit of Cairnabog and all that stuff. Anyway, hope you have enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things. And go check out another video if you want to. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye.